David Edward and John Brink discuss John's new book, ADHD Unlocked.
John, how are you?
I'm doing well, David. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, but I'm not doing as good as you. We were just talking. You are one of the more inspirational people that we're probably ever going to talk to on this podcast.
Oh my goodness!
Well, I want to.
Already.
I want to start out with a compliment, sure. But I made some notes. I mean, you've written 2 books. We're going to talk about the second one, ADHD, which also talks a little bit about your journey. But you changed countries and you now live in Canada incredibly successfully. I don't want to give it all away, but you have a very successful enterprise there. As you told me, you're the oldest competitive bodybuilder in Canada, which is awesome. And you're Dutch Air Force Special Forces. So, I mean, what else could you be? What else could you do?
Yeah, the sky is the limit, David. As you already indicated, I'm a classic example of ADHD. I didn't find out until I was about 57. Amazingly, I was born in Holland in 1940. We were liberated by the Canadians in April the 12th, 1945. Okay. And it made an immense impression on me at the time when I was 5 years old. And I always knew from that point forward, I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And I wanted to go when I was 17, but as you already indicated, I was then drafted into the Army, in my case, Air Force, and had to spend 2 years in the Air Force. Amazingly special forces, which was quite a good training. Then finally I left and I was 24. I wanted to start from the bottom up. I had virtually no money with me. I couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, and didn't have a job. But I had a dream. I wanted to build a lumber mill. And that's kind of how it all started. The other part that I should mention to you in context of the book ADHD, my academic life in Holland was not all that good. I failed grade 3. Who fails grade 3? Really? And then I failed grade 7 3 times. And, and then finally they said, well, what do we do with this guy? Do we send him to the mentally challenged school or should we get him a job? Well, now at 14, so I got a job and they sent me to a furniture factory and I became a furniture maker. And which was quite a challenge because all of a sudden going from school, the day after the school came out that summer, everybody was going on holidays. My dad got myself a set of coveralls and sent me to the furniture factory. The coveralls, I was small for my size. The coveralls, they couldn't find the right size. They were far too big, so they had to roll them up several kinds on the legs, and the crotch was hanging on the knees, which is popular now. Then it wasn't. But anyway, so that's how I started, in my job.
Well, so furniture. I know furniture is made with a lot of lumber and wood. Is there any correlation? Is that why you went into that industry?
Yeah, it kind of gave me the, they had to do something with me, and I was quite active. No surprise now, but then was quite entrepreneurial already at a young age. Collected bottles and delivered all kinds of things. So I always had a few dollars in my pocket, or goldens in that case, and so I kind of liked it, and it kind of put me set up. My dad was managing a small lumber company, not his own, and I wanted to go into that particular field. So it got me started, at least getting a trade and going in that direction.
Yeah, well, I mean, in some ways, you're still in the same industry. We could argue, right? I mean,
I am.
So yeah,
no question about
that. Now, we talked a little bit, and I wasn't going to bring it up, but we're going to talk about ADHD, which is a very serious topic. But I think you were lucky to have been drafted into the military. I know for me, I had no idea it was ADHD. I dropped out of college. I mean, I did make it through. I barely made it through a couple of grades. I got into college, but it wasn't for me. And I put myself in the military because at the time, we're talking a while ago, there was no better cure for someone who was impulsive and couldn't focus than military basic training and stuff. And that's why I did it. And you had the same journey.
Absolutely.
So let's get into the book. So what was it that, because this isn't your first book, it's your second book. Your first book is Against All Odds. What's that?
Very popular.
Good. I'm sure they all are. But what was, I mean, this is a bit of a personal journey. What was it about your journey with ADHD and all that prompted you to want to write it down and share it with people?
It started with really against all odds, and you have seen it here earlier. And they said, well, why did you write against all odds? Well, the journey was not an easy one all along. The part of when I left Holland for the dream in Canada was that I felt I had been a failure. And in many ways, but I still was an optimist in a lot of ways. But I was kind of end drawn, or and I knew I had to start anew again, and I knew I could do it, but I had to kind of remove myself from the setting that I was in, go to Canada and start right from the bottom up all over. And so that's what I did. And then it's all described in the against all odds. All odds is not about hurrah, hurrah, John, but it's more about growing up during the Second World War, PTSD. It was not easy for us as a family. My mother had 3 young kids. Every morning we would go up to the rail yards with a gunny sack to pick up anything burnable and edible. And so things were not easy. It took 5 years to know if my dad was still alive or he had not survived.
Oh, wow.
And it was difficult times. And, and then obviously starting in the schooling and then the effects of ADHD, I was not a success there. So I felt I kind of was a failure. And then the more I thought about it, the more I knew that I could do it. And then I always felt that I should try to write a book. And I tried it many, many times. So what I usually say, talking about against all odds, is it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And it was the first one I wrote. But the one thing that I did know, David, if I did it, I had to do it well. So I had to, and that's not easy for somebody with grade 7. And then, although I'm a very good writer, amazingly, not untypical for ADHD, and I got a good team around me, and and study the issues about writing books and what do you have to do and what are the steps to try to make it a success. And it has been quite successful.
Well, so what is your let's get into it. What is your process for writing a book? I always tell people there's the day before you're actually writing it, and then the day you are writing it. What changes on those 2 days?
So as I said, it took me 20 years to think about it. That not so much hurrah, hurrah, John, but encouraging people with all the challenges that we have individually. To get share that with others that have challenges and give them encouragement, still be an optimist and look forward to opportunities and challenges. So it took me at least 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times over the 20 years that I started to write it. And then somehow, again, it drifted away and it stopped. And then a couple of years ago now, I started thinking about, if I don't do it now, I will never do it. So I started then thinking about it, put more structure to it. The other thing that I have is that being ADHD, I needed something that would make me hyper focus, and then I needed a push behind me. And then at the same time, there's more to a book than just writing it. You have to understand in terms of, okay, you write a book. If you want to share it with your family, or is it just for the purposes of kind of documenting who you were or are? Then if you want to go beyond that, which I wanted to do, go broader than that, then it becomes a question of, do you want to publish it? And how does that all work? And what should be the size of the book? What should be the cover? What should it look like? How does it make it attractive? Should there be pictures in the book? This one has at least 16 pictures in the book. There you see me standing on a sawmill, and it's a very, very interesting book. And all of those things took time. I knew if you do it well. I do that with everything that I do. And then I got it printed, and and as I indicated, quite successful so far. I didn't look at it to make my fortune, by the way, but I wanted to, more than anything, share it with other people that have challenges.
Right.
And I knew from that point forward that the other part, as you know, that has a certain amount of stigma related to ADHD. And by coincidence, I found out by just being in the bookstore, seeing a book, Driven to Distraction was the title of the book, that I saw in the book talking about ADHD, and I could not believe it, that I stood there and I said, oh my God, that's me.
Yeah.
And I was in the store at least for a half an hour looking at the book. Finally, the guy that owned it said, "Are we going to buy it or what?" So anyway, I bought it. I wrote in it in Dutch. Now I finally know who I am.
Right. Well, so what is I think we said what is ADHD?
Obviously, the traits for ADHD is you lose attention fairly quickly if it becomes boring, like sitting in a school for 4 years listening to the same things over and over again. You drift away and you go elsewhere. So the other thing is more on the positive side, that you have usually the ability to super focus on other things, that the hyper focusing is something that is the trait of ADHD that can be available to those that can discover it. And, so the other one is impulsivity. I knew that when I first did the self-analysis and went through the 20 questions that I found on Google, I had every single one of them. The only one I did not have is the one was hyper. Obviously I had the focus, and then the impulsivity I did not have. And the reason that I didn't have it is because I taught myself not to have it. Because if I want to build a business, I must then control that part of me, and I did. But the rest, all of them, I had. And,
we share many of similar experiences. What does a person get from reading ADHD? Is there a message in it, and then is there a takeaway?
Yeah, the other thing that I did was that, David, I knew I could not write that book as I would write other books. So I had to read it for somebody that loses attention maybe quickly. So the book is written in such a way that you can open it anywhere in the book where you want to, read as much as you want to, then go start someplace else again. That to me was important. The other part that was important to me is to introduce about 10 or 12 different people with the same experiences as that I had. Give you an example. The foreword is written by a lady by the name of Tracy Lotz, who's probably one of the most popular MDs in the region here in northern BC, and an emergency surgeon, ADHD, wrote the foreword. And there are many other ones that were part of it. And, it becomes a very interesting book to read.
First off, I love. It never occurred to me you have to write for your audience, and if you're writing a book about ADHD for people with ADHD, you're right. That is, you can't write that like a regular book. But do you find, and you talk to a lot of people that have this, do you find later in life that a lot of people that were not diagnosed with ADHD as a kid but later discover they had it, do you find them to be more successful generally, or maybe more entrepreneurial?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I say, that, and I speak about it whenever the opportunity presents itself. That goes, not a day does not go by that I don't encounter people that say, I've never thought about it really, but I have ADHD, because the stigma is still in the process of diminishing. I got a text this meeting. I just showed it to my office staff here from an individual in Kelowna that said, "Oh, thank you for the book, John, but I cannot believe it. My son was diagnosed with ADHD, and I read your book, and I have ADHD too. I thank you for the book," and blah, blah. So the whole purpose of the book is again that it will help to unlock the liabilities and the benefits of ADHD. And I say there are only benefits once you understand it. And then you can harness it. It is immensely powerful. I call it a superpower.
I agree. I do have a question, though. I don't normally kind of go off topic like this, but I'm just curious. When this is diagnosed in kids today, don't they treat it with medication?
In some cases, and again, I'm not a doctor, obviously, but and give medical advice. But I'm saying I was suggested at one point I talked to my doc about it when I was this a long time ago in 2008, I think. And I said to him, should I be using medication? And he said, well, I don't know. How about Adderall? So he subscribed Adderall to me, 100 pills, and I had 3 of them. And then they didn't do nothing for me, and I just went away from that totally. I still have 97 of them in a little bottle sitting in my office drawer. So, 20 years ago or whenever. So the point is this one. I would not, others may, but the key area would be, David, get a diagnosis early as you can. The other thing that I'm saying, hence the book, is that read the book, because there is no question that you as an individual, not you meaning David, but in a general sense to your listeners, is that around your circle, your friends, your family, or the people that you work with, you will encounter ADHD. And the better you understand it, the better you will appreciate it, because they are a little bit different, but it can be and it will be extremely powerful.
Well,
and it's not a stigma, it's a benefit.
I agree. I agree. It's a benefit, actually. And that's kind of where I was going is I think a lot of this stuff, yeah, I agree. If it's in someone in second grade, they can be disruptive, but you take that away from a person, and I think you lose a lot of the drive in society, because I think we'd be hard pressed to find too many hyper successful people that don't have, if not diagnosis ADHD, they don't have the character traits, and they don't have that same inner push. And it's the same thing you said, right? Which is, no matter, you feel like you got to work as hard as you can because you don't want to be a failure, and you are hyper focused on the positives and moving forward. And it's a superpower. It is. And I hate to see us take it away from kids, although I understand some of the early traits of it can be very disruptive. And you cover some of that in the book. That's actually reminded me a lot of this when I was looking at that before we talked.
And the other part about it is that I wanted to start over again. I felt I was a failure, so I wanted to start off with nothing, or close to nothing. $25.47, didn't have a job, didn't all of that, and I described that in Against All Odds. Yeah. But it led towards saying that I want to talk about ADHD in a book where I can say that this is the route that I want, and it's a superpower, no question about it. And if it does nothing else other than that it makes you uniquely different. Now I'm getting to settings where I do a lot of public speaking, and where I was in the room the other day and did a presentation of about 20 people. There were 3 of them that announced that they were ADHD and never had even talked about it. I'm now getting to the point that, you talk to a group of people, and a lot of the people there say, darn, I wish I had it too. So,
well, yeah, I don't know about that either, but yeah, no, we all are who we are, for sure. Yeah. So John, this book ADHD, it's been out for, let's see, July, August, it's about a month and a half, not even a month and a half. So it's still pretty new. Is there anything specifically that has surprised you about the release of this book?
I knew the timing is everything, as you know, David, and all the things that you do. I felt an obligation talking about it more publicly. I did that in my public speaking that I do 5 years ago. I started to talk about it more and more and more and more. And then I felt I had to write about it, and I had to write about it uniquely. I did that. I started with the book about a year and a half ago before publication. And then when I released it, timing was just impeccable in terms of it has a lot of attention of others and saying, let me know, what is it? The other part about it that I knew I had to do is to do it differently than other people write books. Against All Odds is the story of All Odds. Extremely interesting. It touches on that. But ADHD Unlocked uniquely is aimed at those that have ADHD, or those that want to understand it or get distracted easily. The other part is not only ADHD. There are a lot of people that are slow learners because of trauma or other things that may have happened in their lives, that simply are not very good at sitting in a classroom for 4 years and then on the basis of that being fed information. They're just not simply good at that. And right. And it is for that purpose as well. So it is not simply for ADHD, but it addresses the whole issue of how can we be more effective and training and teaching people skill sets.
So normally the last question I ask is, what advice would you have for someone who wanted to write a book? But I want to ask a different question. So what advice do you have for someone who's older, and believes they have ADHD, other than buying and reading your book, which of course is a no-brainer? What advice would you have for them about maybe the first step now that they think they've realized that?
Enjoy the ride. Because it only gets better. Saying if I look at it, if you say old and then you qualify that by older, who is older than 82? Who is going to
no one? Yeah, Moses.
The national bodybuilding contest? Who is doubling the size of their company? Who is writing a book every year? There's another one already on its way.
That's great.
Finding Your Passion, Live the Dream, and 2 other books. How much better does it get? I can run circles around most people. I go to the gym here when I'm finished. I go to the gym because I'm competing in November.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
the oldest competitive bodybuilder in Canada.
All right.
So
yeah, no, that's good. Well,
that's
good luck,
being older. Unlock the dream. It is a superpower. Be blessed if you have it.
Wonderful. All right, John, look, it's a pleasure, absolute pleasure talking to you. And I think this book is important for a lot of reasons. And I think that the work you're doing with these additional books, I think are important too. Your first one, and then the next one, because people who don't go on journeys like this, but write about it, I don't think come across anywhere near as legit, as informative and helpful as someone like yourself, who is talking about their life experience in a very specific way that other people can relate to. Because we all, this ADHD thing, I'm torn, because I don't even know if it's really, I think don't they call it a disease? I mean, I don't think it's a disease.
It's a benefit.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with you. It is not attention deficit disorder.
Right.
It's a benefit, so but I'll use whatever they want to use. The other comment that I was going to make is, because when we started our interview, if you allow me, is you said what usually happens is I ask you a few questions, because what happens in these kind of conversations sometimes is you start talking about it and then very quickly my audience lose interest. I can assure you that they don't, because they are here somewhere and they say, I must find more out about this guy because he's different.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll have data. And we can look at it. So we have a prediction, and then I'll have data, and then we can look at it and see what happens. But I certainly wouldn't bet against you, John. I guarantee you that.
Thanks, David.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. It's nice talking to you. Bye.
Yeah, nice to have you.
Thank you for watching. Please consider hitting the subscribe button.